Hello, and welcome to the Thinking Elixir podcast, where we cover the news of the community and learn from each other. My name is Mark Erickson.
And I'm Dave Lucia.
Holy shiatsu massage. We take 1 week off and a ton of stuff happens. From a new OTP release to ElixirConf EU reveals and plenty more. So special thanks to you, Dave. Dave Lucia is joining me to help tackle all the news. David Bernheisel had a work commitment and couldn't make it today, but should be back next time. Whew, so we got a lot to cover. Let's get into the news.
OTP 28 is now released. If you go over to the Erlang blog, you'll see that it has been released on May 21st, and it has a bunch of great new features. So starting with this release, a software bill of materials, an SBOM, which describes the release, is on the GitHub releases page. There are a number of new features and other changes in OTP 28 as well. A significant one being new functionality making it possible for processes to enable the reception of priority messages. You can look at EEP 76 for more information on this feature, which I'm actually quite intrigued by myself, as I am not sure of the use case. Mark, do you?
Yeah, so a little quote from it says, in some scenarios, it is important to propagate certain information to a process quickly without the receiving process have to search the whole message queue, which can become very inefficient if the message queue is long. So this EEP introduces the concept of priority messages to the language, which aims to solve this issue. When you think about message passing, and a process has a message inbox, like a mailbox, right? And if you imagine that everything comes in, it just stacks up sequentially. The process can look through all of the messages and decide which one to grab, but by default, it's going to take the next one. Like it just grabs the next message. But if there's a priority one, if you think like that message mailbox idea, if I have a priority mail, it's got like the maybe red and blue borders around the edges. Something is highlighting that this is important. This needs to be looked at first. So it just gives the process a way to quickly identify these are the messages that are priority messages. They should be handled first. Maybe they're interrupting what they're doing. That's really only becomes an issue when you have processes that get those long queues of messages. And that really depends on how you build the process and what it's doing.
So I imagine that if you're using this feature, you really know what you're doing. Because if you don't, and you're always saying, my messages should be a priority, what's going to happen there is you're going to starve out all the other messages going to the process, and it's not going to behave as you expect. So with great power comes great responsibility. All right, so looking at some of the other features here, Erlang is getting zip generators added to the language. So we got a new language feature. This is maybe something analogous to what we have in Elixir with for comprehensions. Mm-hmm. Generators are also getting some parallel features related to comprehensions. As far as the rest of the language goes, the compiler and JIT are also getting new features, including error message support, the ability to have more emoji support with atoms, and other types of optimizations regarding to the JIT. Beyond that, there are shell and terminal enhancements. I believe there is a cooked and non-cooked mode, a raw mode added to the shell. And Dialyzer got a new feature called nominal types, which has been implemented.
In that blog post, there are links to more specific EEPs and other information about those.
So please check out the link and check out the release notes for Erlang OTP 28 if you'd like to dig deeper.
And next up, ElixirConf EU 2025 has finished, and some of the videos have begun to show up. So we've got a link to the YouTube playlist where we expect more videos will just appear in that playlist. So you can bookmark that one. But what we've got right now is 2 of them. And the first video to show up is Chris McCord's keynote. It's called Code Generators Are Dead, Long Live Code Generators. He covers a lot. It's a keynote. It's like an hour long, and he even goes beyond time. He was one of the concluding speakers. So I want to cover some of what he's talked about, but really this is one that you will want to watch. And I saw the YouTube count for the views is already pretty high. So I know people are jumping on this one. But one of the things is he describes how Phoenix 1.8 in the RC, there's a number of code generator improvements, including the magic links, which is the passwordless login, which can really simplify the whole authentication sign up process, because registering and signing up is the same thing as just logging in. So you're getting rid of a lot of that complexity. Chris also introduces and explains the new scopes struct that's used by Phoenix generators to help protect against broken access control issues. And that's where a user can manipulate the URL to access data they shouldn't be able to see, because by default, the Phoenix generators would generate code that just says, here's a list of like all the to-do items. The generators don't take into account that they should be isolated to an account or anything like that. So with the addition of scopes, now we're able to see how you can get more of a secure design by default. Chris does a great job of just explaining what scopes are. And really, some people have had like this, maybe an incorrect assumption that this is like a new macro magic or something like that. And really, it's nothing like that. This is just a generator, which is just code that you now own. And there's no magic behind it. It's just a module. And what it does is the generated code will use these scopes, which can batch up a whole bunch. It's like a bag of all the state that you want to track about a user. So maybe who the user is, what company or account they're associated with, maybe if they're masquerading as another user, all that kind of stuff can be put in this scope. And then you can pass that down into your context functions for querying what blog posts should be visible to this user. It's a really welcome change. I'm really excited to play with it. I haven't actually had the time to sit down and work on that yet.
I haven't either, but wow, it is really nice to see this added right into the framework. This is something that I've rolled my own, currently rolling my own at TV Labs, and I can just see a huge improvement for anyone who's trying to solve this problem over and over and over again and struggling with some of the libraries out there that try and solve authorization. So this is, for me, a really welcome and maybe overdue change.
Yeah, I think about how would I bring this in. This is the kind of thing that you don't have to adopt and bring into your existing project if you already have your own solution. But I think in my own projects where I've already done isolating function calls and everything on context to make sure everything is properly isolated, that this would be, if you really wanted to fully adopt this, this would go all over in your contexts. That this is like the thing that you're passing in, plus maybe some extra arguments on these context functions. So it could be a big deal. So it's just something that might be easiest to start with a new Phoenix project, but certainly want to play with it and decide how and if you want to bring that into your existing projects. Continuing in Chris's keynote, he also shares his thoughts on how LLMs fit into developing Phoenix applications. And he totally acknowledges that some people are very mixed in how they feel about LLMs in general, and then how they feel about them in terms of coding, because it can feel like a threat or it can feel like an incredible tool. People have mixed feelings. During this, he announced a new website called phoenix.new. So that's https://phoenix.new. It's not just a generator like, Phoenix new generator. This is like, well, I will say it is a generator, but it's not a code generator. It's complicated. All right, you have to see the live demo to really appreciate what this is. But the takeaway points that I would say is that he compares LLMs are a more advanced and customized code generator. As developers, we've been using code generators like Mix Phoenix New or Mix Gen Auth or anything like that. We've been using those for many years, and a code generator might get you like 10% of the way there to your end goal. And he's positing that, code generators, the way we've been building them, maybe they're dead. Maybe LLMs will be the next code generator. What he's comparing that to is to say maybe the LLM generated code gets you 75% of the way to your goal, but it gets you there very quickly, just like your normal code generator. So my teaser description, I guess, is what he's demoing is like vibe coding a new Phoenix app, but completely on steroids. So you give it like the minimal amount of prompts and you just let this thing run. And it's really awesome because he's just demoing how good Elixir is and the Beam is at running agentic processes where you're just continually having the AI iterate on something. It is definitely a must watch. And yeah, I don't know. Have you had a chance to watch that, Dave?
I haven't, but I can't wait to vibe with it. I'm really looking forward to this talk. It's been something that Chris has been teasing for months now.
It's true.
And so now that it is out, from what I've seen teased online, it looks quite exciting. Between this and the Phoenix Sync that we're going to get to in a moment, I think these are both two really exciting talks.
Yeah. And I will say, I did get a sneak peek at this phoenix.new website and got to play with it. And it is a little bit insane. So you have to get yourself on the wait list and try it out. Chris makes it clear that that work is part of his work and employment at fly.io. And it is generating and running these applications in these locked down containers in Fly. So you're actually deploying these like live code on machines and getting live like browser views of what's going on in the machine. So it's really cool stuff. Yeah. Production monitoring can be complicated. There are tons of tools and techniques, but you just want to know that your app is up and your users are happy. When your customers encounter a problem, you need clear, actionable intelligence, not walls of charts and reams of logs. That's why they built Honeybadger, the monitoring tool you've always wanted, a tool that's there when you need it and gets out of your way when you don't. With Honeybadger, you'll know when critical errors occur and which customers are affected. Respond instantly when your systems go down, improve the performance of your systems over time, and fix problems before your customers can report them. Honeybadger is the application health monitoring tool built for you, the developer who cares about a quality product and happy customers. Start monitoring today at honeybadger.io. It's free to get started, and setup takes less than 5 minutes. Once again, that's honeybadger.io.
All right, the second available ElixirConf EU video is a keynote by James Arthur, CEO of ElixirSQL, and it's called Introducing Phoenix Sync. From the README, Phoenix Sync is for building real-time apps on Sync. Phoenix Sync is a library that adds real-time sync to Postgres-backed Phoenix applications. Use it to sync data into both LiveView and front-end web and mobile applications. So it integrates with plug and controller and all of your familiar Phoenix parts and tools. It uses ElixirSQL for the core sync, fan-out, and data delivery, and it maps ecto queries into shapes for partial replication. Now, you might be thinking of, when would I want to use a tool like this? And this is when you have many users who are modifying the same data. Maybe you're building a collaborative code editor or something like that. And you need to be able to replicate changes from your database to all of your users and reconcile any state conflicts on the fly. Phoenix Sync is solving this problem for you, and it fits right into your existing Phoenix application. So you may be thinking to yourself, this sounds really familiar. That's because Jose Valim gave a talk on this very topic back in ElixirConf US 2024. So at the time, this was a proof of concept that Jose had put together that used Postgres replication, very manually, I might add, in order to solve this very same problem of synchronizing data between the front end and the back end that preserved transactional consistency. So Jose had gone through the problem and how the tools and the special features of the Beam make this possible with Elixir, but archived the project and said, this is just a prototype and a conceptual framework for how you could build something like this. I'm going to leave this up to the community to solve this problem further. So James Arthur picked up the reins and went ahead and made that a production-ready tool. So if you're looking to solve these types of problems, Phoenix Sync sounds like a really, really useful tool. And I myself have my eyes set on this for some of the features that I want to build into my own products.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. I can't wait to see when more people start talking about it and using it. But yeah, the conference talk was great, so you can check that one out. And next up, the EEF board elections have concluded. So if you recall, the EEF has 3 cohorts and they cycle through, and this was for cohort C. Over the last month, they've been running the elections, and now it's concluded, so we can now announce who the new board members are. The new cohort C now contains the following 3 new members: Lars Vikman, Lee Barney, and Zach Daniel. Included in the show notes is a link to the candidates page where they had listed who all the candidates were. So you can read a short introductory bio or blurb about each candidate in case you're interested and want to learn a little bit more about who your new board members are.
More from the EEF. They have officially become a CVE Numbering Authority, a CNA, for the Hex and Beam ecosystem. So you can check out the blog and the show notes for the announcement, but it says the EEF has officially joined the CVE program as an authorized CVE numbering authority. This designation allows us to assign CVE IDs and publish CVE records for publicly disclosed cybersecurity vulnerabilities within our defined scope, helping to improve security and transparency in the broader open source community. Now, each CVE ID is a unique identifier, and it makes it easier to talk about and fix vulnerabilities. Being part of this program means we can help track and coordinate security issues across the Beam ecosystem in a standard, globally recognized way. So you might have remembered that there was a big OTP issue not too long ago with the SSH server in Erlang. This, I believe, was not reported through the EEF directly, but probably had to go through some other authority to get that CVE number, and that everything could be announced and properly marketed so that you could go ahead and fix these problems. Now, when these types of issues are recognized, the EEF is now the community authority that can then have that broader outreach for everyone so that you can go and patch up your applications if you are exposed. So for the scope of coverage, the CNA is responsible for assigning CVE IDs and publishing CVE records for all active packages hosted on HexBM, provided no specific CNA exists for that package, and all active projects hosted under the following GitHub organizations, including Elixir Lang, Erlang, the ErlF CNA, ErlF, Gleamlang, and HexPM. So this is great news, and this is just another step of maturing the greater Beam ecosystem.
Awesome. Yeah, we learned about that previously, that work was underway. So it's really great to see that come to completion there. And next up, co-located hooks and macro components are coming to LiveView. If you have ever used Surface, it's the server-side rendering components for LiveView, which is a separate project. It's not officially part of LiveView. But if you've used that, then you'll know what this whole PR is trying to accomplish. It's putting your JavaScript alongside your template where your Heeks references it. So normally, if you're doing components and hooks the way you would do it today, your Heeks template saying this is how the rendering should happen, and then the hook is in a separate JavaScript file that has to get loaded into your app.js. So what this is doing is being able to put all of that into one spot, just so that it's co-located. The benefit being it's easier to reason about and think about and keep up to date when you're looking at all of it in one place. So we've got a link to the PR where Stefan, who is a Phoenix core team member, it's a draft PR, but it illustrates how this would actually work. The PR has been in progress for a while, so there's a lot of deep thought and work that's been going into this, but just checking out the PR description is a really great place to see what this would look like, right? Where it shows you this is how it would appear in your template, where you'd have these little script tags and say that this script is of a type that's for co-located JavaScript. So I totally recommend checking out that PR just to get an idea of it. I don't know when it's going to be merged. Given all of the discussion on it, I totally expect this one to, at some point, end up in LiveView. But one of the interesting things is this being in the template like that is it would be happening at compile time. And so co-located hooks are extracted out into a common area and in your build path, which is picked by your JavaScript transpiler, which you then can use in your typical LiveView JavaScript initialization. And since it's happening at compile time, this means that LiveView will also introduce a macro component, which is a Phoenix component that runs at compile time. This mechanism is used for co-locating JavaScript hooks, but you can also do other cool things with it. Stefan illustrates in his PR that you could also leverage this to create a Markdown rendering component. Again, this is at compile time, so you're actually transforming AST more than you are really writing HTML at that point. For example, you might write a typical Phoenix component and supply a special Heeks attribute that points to your macro component, and your component then transforms the body of the Heeks component and turns it into something else. I could see that being a problem if people just abused it. If you were able to include Markdown in your Heeks component and your macro component can transform that Markdown into HTML, that's the kind of thing you could do. I can't wait to see what people do with that and how badly it gets abused. It sounds interesting.
I need to just call out something really important here, which is that Marlis Saraiva, the creator of Surface, was ahead of the curve by,
oh yes, years.
I mean, it's 6 or 7 years. I mean, these features have existed in Surface for well before pre 1.0 on Phoenix LiveView, and really were developed alongside of Phoenix LiveView. So on one hand, this is so exciting that these features are coming into Phoenix LiveView. In previous projects, I've made heavy use of Service with macro components. Can be very useful, especially for Markdown. And the co-located hooks are just great. Locality is always great. Having all of your code located next to each other makes it really easy to context switch between files and focus on the problem at hand. Features that are still missing, though, from Surface that I think are really great are Surface-specific template syntax for doing things like a for-else loop, which is I want to loop through each of these items and gen up markup, but if there's nothing in the loop, if the list is empty, then here's the fallback data. There's other syntax for if and for that are inline on the components that did make their way to LiveView, but things like Surface context for propagating data deep down into the template that you can reference later for solving things like prop drilling. Those features are still missing. Unified components and live components still missing. So I think a lot of great work here, and I'm really excited that more features from Surface are being pulled over. But I think we should just take a whole holistic look at Surface and be like, maybe Marlis was right about everything and we need to just bring this over.
Yep.
Well, a new release of the Elixir Lua package was released, v02.x by TV Labs. Those people sound familiar. If you recall, Lua project is an Elixir wrapper around the Erlang LuaURL project that provides a Lua implementation running directly on the beam. So this is not an embedded Lua compiler that's written in C running as a NIF. No, this is a full implementation of the parser, the runtime, the compiler, everything all written in Erlang and then exposed with some really nice ergonomic features for Elixir. So the recent changes improve the macros validation of data, preventing harder to debug downstream effects. So if you accidentally hand over a data structure that LuaURL couldn't understand previously, it would happily accept it. But then if you used it in a way that it wasn't intended for, it would blow up. Now we don't allow that altogether. Related to this, Dave, hey, that's me, shared an ElixirConf EU talk from last year about LuaURL that has been published online. So in this talk, Robert Verding, the co-creator of Erlang and the creator of LuaURL, talks through LuaURL, how it's built, the unique features of it. And then in my half of the talk, I talk about how we use LuaURL at TV Labs for our automation platform and the Lua high-level library that we built on top to solve our problems. So check it out. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. We'd be happy to help. And we also have a Discord for LuaURL where you can get deeper on the topic with other enthusiasts.
And next up, Live Debugger, put out by Software Mansion, is a great tool. We've talked in depth about Live Debugger in episode 249 with Christoph, and he shared what was planned for version 0.2.0, which has been previously released. And the dev tool gives you real-time insights into what's happening with your LiveView and live components. Well, Herman Valesco has created one of his signature short videos that highlights this great tool. So we've got links to that in the show notes. If you haven't tried out Live Debugger yet, now you can go watch a simple, quick little video that gives you the idea of what is this all about. And it'll hopefully get you all pumped up and convince you to try it out because it really is a great tool. I totally recommend you play with it and use it if you haven't already.
What's really exciting about Live Debugger is I've noticed that it is actually bringing more changes to Phoenix LiveView to make it more debuggable. So my understanding is that part of the biggest challenge with building Live Debugger was hooking in and discovering live views and discovering when different states and events happen. And so now that is being brought into LiveView directly so that they could show that information to you much faster and more reliably. So this is a great bi-directional improvement here.
Yeah, that's cool.
MDEx gets a update that includes the Markdown sigil. So V07 includes a new MD sigil that can transform your Markdown into HTML, JSON, XML, or other Markdown. Now remember, with sigils, there is a possibility of adding modifiers to the end of the sigil, like MD_foo, JSON at the end, which will run the string through the sigil MD macro with the option of JSON, and then at compile time will do that conversion to you. So this allows you to give the sigil parameters and change it on the fly however you like. Now, the cool thing about MDEx is that it works with the syntax highlighter package Autumn. This is also cool because the recent MDEx plugin called MDEx Mermaid, which, as you guessed it, gives you mermaid support in your Markdown documents. This is a really cool package. They've done so much great stuff with layering on great features and user experience in a way where it makes it so accessible and easy to use, and I love it.
The work is being done by Leandro, and a lot of the work on MDEx has shown up in the Beacon CMS project by Dockyard. So really appreciate all of that work that he's been doing. And yeah, so I recently discovered the Mermaid one, which is like only about 2 months old, because I was working with an LLM and with Markdown, having this conversation about how to design some feature. And it says, hey, I created a diagram for you. And it did it using, the backticks and Mermaid, and then wrote the diagram in Mermaid syntax. And I was like, I don't actually have a way to render that right now, but I am using MDEx. Let me see if there's a way to do that. And I find there's a Mermaid package, which is really cool because it just hooks into a pipeline. So you can say MDEx and you can pipe it into the Mermaid package. It's kind of like a plugin that just made it so I could render and see these beautiful little diagrams. It was a super great tool. And I was just like surprised that this Mermaid plugin was already there. So thanks, Leandro. And next up, a new convention is brewing for hex packages. LLM agents need instruction, and with the rise of MCP servers that provide instructions and access to AI agents, the community has realized that there's still a gap between those tools. For example, Tidewave provides AI agents custom tools that allow it to work with frameworks such as Phoenix, and Tidewave can provide the agent normalized access to packages documentation. However, the gap is right there where the documentation was designed for human consumption, and the AI agent would really kind of have to read all of the documentation to understand how to use the package. And there's no documentation as part of that is specialized and oriented for the LLM to help it get started and understand what it needs to know about the code in the least amount of tokens and context window. Therefore, a new convention is to provide a usage_rules Markdown file in packages that provides system prompts to the AI agents so it can better use the package when it needs to. The package is technically under the Ash project, but it's not related to Ash at all. So this is something any package maintainer could use and add this to their own package as a dependency to help make their package more directly understandable and actionable to an LLM. And what that means is your AI assistant will have a much better time understanding your project and working with the libraries that you're using and the versions of the libraries that you're using too. So very cool. I haven't had a chance to play with this. I got to try it out and see some examples to leverage this. I'm looking forward to it.
I've been using Claude Code and Claude Desktop quite a bit. This has actually been interesting when I've been doing non-Elixir stuff, particular OpenTofu, where I'm building out infrastructure. But in Claude, you use a Claude MD file, which is a similar idea. You give it useful snippets and conventions and kind of where things are located, and it's a guide for the LLM. So this is more of a generic solution to provide an instruction for your LLM. And, I was discussing this with my team last week. How should we standardize around this? And we were discussing Claude MD or something else. And I think Zach has gone ahead and solved this problem for us. So we'll go ahead and adopt usage_rules.md. This sounds great.
Yeah. And last up, some non-Elixir news. Some of the stuff that we saw in the tech community. Now, man, I tell you, in the process of 2 weeks, a ton of stuff happens in the tech community. So we can't nearly touch on all of it. Tons of stuff in the AI space. New models being released, Google I/O, everything. But one of the ones that stood out to me was that Microsoft announced that the Windows subsystem for Linux is now open source. I thought that was pretty significant. In 2024, ZDNet reported that 60% of Azure Marketplace offerings and more than 60% of the virtual machines running on Azure use Linux. So those figures makes it very sensible for Microsoft to make it easier than ever for Linux distributors to release first-class Linux distros on Azure. If a customer says we want to use Red Hat, we want to use Ubuntu, we want to use any given distro, by making the Windows subsystem for Linux open source, it makes it a whole lot easier for those distributors and developers of those distributions to make sure it works well and tune it, or at least just test it to say that it will work well for that. And that gives all the developers on the Windows machines who are using WSL2, it gives them a much better experience.
Well, at the very least, Mark, could we say that this is finally the year of the Linux desktop at Microsoft? 2025, we finally did it.
That's funny. Yeah, because I run Linux as my primary desktop. It's on all my machines. Like I don't actually have a Windows machine. I have some Windows VMs, so I'm all Linux. It's a big deal just because I think it shows a lot about how the culture at Microsoft has changed over time, where they really are embracing more open source and recognizing really we kind of don't care so much about what the OS you're running, so long as you're running it on Azure, our cloud, that's where we make our money. So it's all about the services. Anyway, we got some links on that if you'd like to dig deeper in. So thanks, Dave, for joining to talk about all the news. There was a ton there, and we seriously couldn't cover all of it. I saw there was news that was popping up even just this morning before we recorded, and it's going to have to be saved for another episode. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time on Thinking Elixir.